I am being pursued by the two most popular girls in school at the same time. Everyone is incredibly envious of me. They think I am rich and powerful, that I can choose any princess in the school at will. However, no one knows that. Their confessions to me are merely following their master's orders, from beginning to end. This has all been a scheme against me. I am just a pawn in their game, unexpectedly. Just when they thought they could toy with me at will, treating me like a fool. I slapped each of them once, because this is my second life. I have been reborn. Chapter 1. I have been reborn. Looking at my youthful, wrinkle-free face in the mirror, and my still fair knuckles, after a brief moment of astonishment, I quickly picked up my phone to check the time. June 26, 2024. This was my college entrance examination period when I was choosing my major, and also the time when my two female friends from my previous life, Willow and Anna, began to show their affection and confess to me. A flash of surprise crossed my eyes, and without thinking too much, I grabbed my phone and rushed straight to the office. I said, "Teacher Lisa, I want to change my major, switching South City University to North City University." Upon hearing this, Teacher Lisa smiled with delight. She said, "Have you finally come to your senses? You are the top scorer in the college entrance examination in the city. Although South City University is also quite good, North City University is the highest institution of learning. It would be a shame not to go there." I forced a bitter smile and said, "In the past, I was too willful. I'm sorry, teacher. Now I want to change back." Changing my application didn't take much time. Soon I had completed the changes. However, when I got home, there were already a few unexpected guests. It was my two female friends, Willow and Anna, and my good buddy Makoto. I asked, "What are you all doing?" Seeing me come back, the usually aloof Willow was now full of warmth, smiling at me and saying, "Did you forget? We agreed to have dinner at your place today to celebrate that all four of us got into the same university." Anna, being willful and headstrong, stepped forward a few paces to stand beside me, gently tapping my head. She said, "Big dummy, if I had known you were busy preparing your outstanding graduate speech these past few days, we would have set this up a long time ago. You just needed to come and eat." I was just about to speak when my phone suddenly rang. It was Teacher Lisa calling. "George, you left in such a hurry just now that there was something I forgot to tell you. Originally, you were scheduled to give a speech as an outstanding student in 3 days, but suddenly two influential board members spoke up at the same time and changed it to Makoto." Teacher Lisa's tone was filled with regret. Clearly, from any perspective, I, the top scorer in the college entrance examination, was more suitable to give the speech. I don't know what kind of relationship Makoto has with those two board members, to be able to have them personally intervene and change the decision. But compared to Teacher Lisa's confusion, I glanced at Willow and Anna in front of me, and understood it clearly. "Aren't the fathers of these two childhood friends the school board members?" I said. "I understand now. Thank you, teacher." I calmly nodded, accepting this matter. Teacher Lisa, I didn't expect that I would be so calm. A bit surprised, she said, "You are the top student. You will definitely give a better speech on stage. This is also an honor. Are you really going to give it to Makoto?" I remained calm, even smiled a bit and said, "Let it be. Not only this time, but even Willow and Anna I have given to Makoto. After all, I never want to experience the suffering of my past life again. In my past life, both Willow and Anna once loved me like this, eager to present their hearts to me. For the first time, I married Willow, but in the 3rd year of our marriage, Willow died in a car accident while protecting Makoto, and it was then that I realized she had never loved me. The person she had always loved was Makoto. I was hit hard by a double blow and fell into despair. Anna reappeared in front of me at that moment. She accompanied me out of my sorrow, welcoming me back to a new life, telling me that I still had her. So for the second time, I married Anna. After we got married, her tenderness towards me remained unchanged, but at the same time, it gave me a feeling of mutual respect. At first, I thought it was because love had transformed into familial affection. Until the elderly Makoto was diagnosed with heart disease. She disregarded my objections and unhesitatingly donated her heart. And that was when I realized that the person Anna loved was also Makoto. I don't understand why. Since both of my wives liked Makoto, why did they still marry me? It wasn't until the funeral that Makoto mercifully revealed all the truths to me. He said, "Why did they marry you?" "Of course, because all of this was planned by me. I told them that if they didn't listen to me and marry you, I would disappear from their world forever. They were all scared, which is why they rushed to confess to you. By the way, do you know why you never had a son or daughter in your life? Because they all voluntarily got on birth control for me. They told me that even though they married you, their hearts would always belong to me, and they would never have children with you." Ha ha ha. I felt like I had been struck by lightning, and I desperately asked Makoto why he did this, and his reasons were just as ridiculous. he said. Why, of course, it's because I'm jealous of you. You were born a noble young master, living a life of ease and comfort, while I have to fight tooth and nail for what you can obtain effortlessly. I can't accept that. I just want to see you suffer. I want to tell you that the happiness you cherish is just an illusion I have granted you. After saying that, Makoto left triumphantly, while I was so furious that I spat blood and met my end. Now, the heavens have pitied me and given me a chance to start over. This time, I absolutely will not get involved with them in any way. Chapter 2, Makoto asked. What's wrong? After the call ended, Makoto curiously leaned in, while my expression remained unchanged, as if I were discussing something completely unrelated. I said, 3 days later, the person giving the speech has been changed to you. Makoto replied. What's going on? I didn't do as well as you, nor am I as capable as you, so why has it suddenly changed to me? I can't accept this. I need to hurry back and prepare. His eyes were filled with surprise, and after speaking, he hurriedly ran out. Willow and Anna didn't try to keep him, but their gazes all fell on his back, their love for him evident, wishing they could leave with him at that very moment. I absorbed their gazes. Endley said, if you want to go, then go ahead. Willow said. What nonsense are you talking? You're still here. Why would we go after him? With that one sentence, Willow was instantly brought back to reality. She looked at me again, unable to help but chuckle. After a pause, she pretended to comfort me, saying, it's just a speaking slot. Don't be too upset. Anna also mentioned. Exactly. George is so impressive. It's the school that lacks vision for replacing you. Anna also echoed Willow's words. I tugged at the corner of my lips, saying nothing. In my last life, they comforted me like this too, but in reality, it was they who arranged for the replacement behind my back. I was just about to say something, but before I could get the words out, I was interrupted again by Willow and Anna, who said, George, we're taking you somewhere. I was mysteriously pulled out by them. It wasn't until we reached our destination, where I was greeted by a sky full of flowers and colorful balloons, that I realized this was a confession spot. Willow pulled out a bouquet of white roses from somewhere, looking deeply affectionate, and said, George, you should be aware of my feelings for you during this time. Now, I want an answer. Seeing this, Anna was unwilling to fall behind, quickly taking out a bouquet of red roses from behind and presenting it to me. Her voice filled with tenderness as she said, George, I liked you first. I have prepared for this confession for 3 months, and you must choose me. As long as you agree to be with me, I will love you for a lifetime. You can have me do whatever you want. Looking at these two people, I was momentarily taken aback. If I hadn't learned the truth, seeing their affectionate expressions, I would probably really believe they loved me. We were once the best childhood friends. How did I not realize before that they had such talent for acting? Just as I was about to speak, several phones suddenly vibrated at the same time. It was Makoto, who left early, sending a message in the group chat of the 4 of us. I just blew up a light bulb while fixing it, so be careful when you fix light bulbs in the future. Now I have to bandage my wound. There was also a pitiful expression following behind. In an instant, Willow and Anna both changed their expressions. Willow couldn't care about confessing anymore and stood up first, saying, someone got hurt at home, so I'll go help with the bandaging first. I'll go with you. Anna quickly stood up after her, and after speaking, she seemed to remember that I was still here, awkwardly saying, George, it's about to get dark soon. We can't delay over there. As for who you ultimately choose, maybe you can just tell us tomorrow. After speaking, neither of them paid any attention to my reaction and hurriedly left. As for me, watching their backs, I couldn't help but find it very funny. Clearly, the evidence that Willow and Anna don't love me is overwhelming. Yet in my past life I was blind to it and never realized. I lowered my gaze, my eyes landing on the 2 bouquets and gift boxes they had left behind, a smile tugging at my lips, though the joy didn't reach my eyes. I picked up the flowers and gifts without a moment's hesitation and tossed them all into the trash can. Willow, Anna, in this lifetime, I won't choose any of you. With 2 months left until school starts, to reduce my interactions with the 3 of them, I simply blocked all contact with Willow, Anna, and Makoto and went on a solo trip for a month. When I returned home after having enough fun, I saw 2 people squatting at the door, and it was none other than Willow and Anna. The noise from the suitcase caught their attention. When they saw it was me, they hurriedly ran to me, each hugging one of my arms, and they worriedly said, where have you been for the past month? You didn't answer your phone or reply to any messages. Do you know that we've been going crazy looking for you? The worry in their eyes seemed genuine, and I couldn't tell how long it had been since they had properly rested or taken care of themselves. At this moment, their eyes were bloodshot, and in such a disheveled state, it was hard to believe they were the 2 biggest class beauties of the affiliated school. I looked at them and inexplicably thought back to when I was 13. My parents couldn't stand the constant arguing and chose to divorce. But when it came to discussing my custody, they began to push the responsibility onto each other, neither willing to accept me as a burden. In the end, they left me with a house and a card to support my living until adulthood, and then they both disappeared. On the night my parents left, I didn't cry or make a fuss, but by evening I quietly ran out alone. At that time, Willow and Anna were also anxiously searching for me all night, and finally found me by the lake. They were also nervously saying to me at that time, "Uncle and Aunt have left, but we are still here. They don't want you, but we do. We will always be with you. From now on, never leave alone again, or we will really go crazy." Chapter 3. A hint of melancholy flashed in my eyes. Clearly, our relationship used to be so good, yet the ones who hurt me the most in my past life were also them. I still don't know how they came to like Makoto, but everything has already happened, and we can never go back to the past. There's no point in getting tangled up in the reasons. I pushed them away and said calmly, "I went on a graduation trip." Willow frowned and asked, "Why did you go alone?" Anna also looked at me disapprovingly and said, "Aren't you afraid of getting lost? Didn't we agree that the four of us would go together?" Seeing that they naturally included Makoto, I didn't show it on my face and reminded them. What we said before was that 3 people would go. Willow suddenly paused, as if just realizing, and asked, "You don't like him? Then let's keep our distance from him in the future." "Okay. I was just thinking that when the 4 of us are in the same school, I should take care of him a bit more. If you don't like it, we can reduce our interactions. The most important thing in my heart will always be you." If I hadn't come back with my memories, perhaps hearing their statements would have genuinely moved me. But now, I just calmly walked past them, heading towards my room, and I said, "I'm going back to put away my luggage. I have to go." Willow and Anna quickly followed me. Willow said, "Today, the class organized a gathering for the students, and the gathering is a barbecue by the seaside. Let's go together. The North City University I want to go to is far away, separated by thousands of miles. We probably won't have any intersection in the future." I thought it would be a good opportunity to say goodbye to my friend one last time, so I agreed. Many people came to the gathering. Almost all the classmates were there, including Makoto. It seems that my sudden decision to go on a trip alone scared the 2 of them. Willow and Anna indeed kept their distance from Makoto, until I went to the nearby restroom halfway through, and when I came out, I saw the so-called goddess Willow and wealthy heiress Anna outside the restroom, both with their heads down, holding Makoto's hand like obedient little dogs nuzzling their owner, begging not to be sent away. They said, "Please don't make us chase George anymore. Okay, we can't pretend any longer. Every moment with him is torture. The person we really like is you, so why can't we stay by your side?" Makoto was surrounded by them, with a barely noticeable sense of pride and satisfaction in his eyes. After listening to their words, however, he did not relent as they wished. He said, "No way. I've said it before. If you don't marry George, I will disappear from your sight forever." Upon hearing this, Willow and Anna immediately panicked and quickly changed their words, saying, "We will be with him, no matter what. We will make it happen." "How did we do today? If it was good, can we get a reward?" Makoto smiled and slightly extended his hand. The 2 of them quickly threw themselves into his arms, as if they were holding the most precious treasure in the world. I couldn't stand their antics any longer, so I turned and walked back to the gathering from another direction. Soon, Willow and Anna also returned one after the other, walking straight towards me, offering drinks when I was thirsty, food when I was hungry, and a coat when I was cold, almost serving me like a king. Some classmates were watching them, curiously gossiping to me, asking, "One is cool and the other is Tsundere. The 2 most popular girls in the school are both pursuing you. George, who do you plan to choose?" Hearing this, the 2 of them also gathered around, their eyes shining with a hint of expectation, asking, "You didn't give an answer that day. Do you have an answer now?" Makoto, who had just fallen a step behind, happened to hear this and a teasing look came to her eyes. The scene I had just seen floated back into my mind. My gaze flickered, and I didn't directly answer their question. I only said, "I'll tell you the answer on the first day of school." Suddenly, a suggestive voice came from behind me. It was Makoto who said, "Then let's look forward to that day." Then, with great interest, he said to me, "George, the shells here are beautiful. Let's go collect some to take back." I furrowed my brow, about to refuse, but he slung his arm around my shoulder and pulled me up. And then, we walked further and further away. Seeing that we had distanced ourselves significantly from the gathering place, I suddenly pushed him away, frowning as I said, "Aren't we supposed to collect shells? Why are we going so far?" He said, "Here, there are quite a few shells." Makoto smiled innocently and pretended to be curious, subtly leaning closer to me and asked, "George, you just said you would choose after school starts. Why must it be after school starts? I'm really curious. Can you tell me in advance?" "I can't tell you." I looked coldly, refusing without mercy. Yet he seemed oblivious and continued chatting. He said, "Are you still unable to decide? Do you want me to help you see who loves you more?" A sense of foreboding suddenly surged from the depths of my heart. Just as I frowned and thought to say it was unnecessary, a sharp pain shot from the top of my head. I instinctively turned around and saw Makoto holding a stone the size of a palm, grinning triumphantly. In the next moment, my vision went black, and I completely lost consciousness. Chapter 4. When I woke up again, the salty smell of the sea filled my nostrils, and I was horrified to discover that both Makoto and I were currently submerged in seawater. "Help! I can't swim," and instinctively began to struggle, but the more I struggled, the more seawater I choked on, and my cries for help grew weaker. In my blurred vision, I vaguely saw two figures rushing over like mad and jumping into the water. It's Willow and Anna. However, as expected, I soon realized, they all swam towards Makoto's direction. In the next moment, I lost the strength to struggle, and my whole body sank towards the depths of the sea. When I woke up again, I was already in the hospital, and Willow and Anna were all by my side. Seeing I was awake, they hurriedly began to apologize. They said, "George, I'm sorry, it was too dark at the time. We mistook you for him and went to save him first. Please don't be mad at us, okay?" The traces of lying were too obvious. I and Makoto had no similarities whatsoever. No matter how you looked at it, they would go to save Makoto first simply because Makoto was their true love. I forced a self-deprecating smile, silently turning my head away from them. It was at that moment that the nurse walked in and said, "The boy next door has woken up too. Do you want to go see him?" Hearing the nurse's words, the two of them instantly became restless, and after waiting for a while, they looked at me, who was still turning my back to them and unwilling to speak, before finally speaking up together. "He caught a cold too, and he's all alone here without anyone to rely on. Let's go check on him and come back." After saying that, the two of them got up and left the ward together, without looking back. Meanwhile, my phone rang. It was a message from Makoto. He wrote, "George, I originally wanted to see who liked you more, but I didn't expect them to save me. I'm sorry. Maybe they felt sorry for me being all alone, so don't blame them." This silly remark fails to stir even the slightest ripple in my heart. I still ignored it and quietly turned off my phone. In the following days, Willow and Anna were constantly running around, and whenever the nurse came to change the dressings or check on them, she would always exclaim how good their relationship was. But only I knew that their hearts had always been focused on Makoto, while every moment spent beside them was a torment. Coincidentally, I also didn't want to see them. I said, "If you have something to do, just go ahead and take care of your own business." As soon as these words were spoken, both of them felt a stir of emotions, but thinking about what was most important to them now was finding a way to marry me. They ultimately held back, and they said, "What else can we do? You're injured, and nothing is more important than you right now." Exactly. What could be more important than taking care of you? By the way, George, are you hungry? It's almost mealtime. I'll go buy some food and come back. Looking at the two people who still wanted to stay by my side, I didn't say anything more, just told myself in my heart, "It's okay, as long as I wait until school starts, everything will be over. By then, the three of them will go to South University. I will go to the faraway North City University, one in the south and one in the north. I will no longer have any intersection with them." A few days later, Makoto and I had both recovered enough to be discharged from the hospital. On the day of discharge, all four of us received a phone call saying that the admission notices had arrived. Makoto said, "Then I'll head home first. School starts soon, so please take care of me from now on." Makoto waved goodbye to Willow and Anna with a smile, and the two also smiled back in response. "Yeah, we'll see each other then." Willow and Anna watched his departing figure, their eyes filled with affection, until I got tired of watching their sweet love and left first. Only then did the two come back to their senses and hurriedly chase after me. When they got home, there were already 3 packages at the door. Willow and Anna didn't think much of it and directly opened their own packages. When they looked up in my direction, they saw me calmly holding my package and preparing to leave. The two exchanged a glance, their eyes filled with confusion. They asked, "George, why aren't you opening it? Is it stuck? We can help you." As soon as the words were out, the two naturally took the package from my hands and opened it. However, when they saw what was inside, they suddenly froze, their expressions shocked. Willow asked, "George, why is your admission notice different from ours?" Chapter 5, I said. "It might be because the academies are different." I quickly snatched the admission notice from their hands, maintaining a calm expression as I casually explained. I said, "I'm a bit tired, so I'm heading back now." Willow and Anna furrowed their brows, feeling that something was off. Just as they were about to ask again, I had already stepped through the door, shutting out all their voices and gazes. The two exchanged a glance, and an inexplicable sense of irritation rose in their hearts. Recently, I've been giving them a different kind of feeling, as if something is out of control, but they can't notice it, nor can they grasp that feeling. Willow said, "Are you going to talk to him?" Willow unconsciously felt that I was angry, and wanted Anna to ask about it. Anna was irritated and ran her fingers through her hair, speaking irritably. "I'm too lazy to go. I'm tired of pretending. If you want to go, you go. I want to go find him. He should have received the notice by now and must be eager to share his joy with us. I want to go too." After speaking, the two of them tacitly chose not to mention the matter of asking me again, and hurriedly left here. Their departure was so decisive that they naturally had no idea that at this moment in the hall, I was watching this scene clearly through the visual doorbell. Watching their departing figures, I smiled. Soon, the three of you will be able to be together forever. However, that evening, Willow and Anna still came to the Wong house, their faces full of smiles that completely masked the way they had pushed each other to ask me earlier that day. Willow asked, "George, have you been feeling down lately? Didn't you always want to go to a bar after the Gaokao? We have time today. How about we go together?" I did indeed say such things before. At that time, they rejected me vehemently, saying they were proper girls and wouldn't want to go to such places. Yet now, they have suddenly agreed. However, in this new life, I no longer wish to go. I said, "No need. I haven't wanted to go for a long time." I shook my head to refuse their invitation, thinking they would only persuade me a couple more times before leaving. However, to my surprise, they took my refusal as insincerity and directly dragged me to a nearby bar. In front of the bar, I ordered a cocktail with a very low alcohol content. The dazzling lights shone on me, and because there were so many people, the air conditioning was set very low, making me shiver involuntarily. When Willow noticed, she quickly took out the scarf she had prepared and tied it around my neck. While Anna was not to be outdone, she took an apple from the fruit platter and started peeling it carefully. Once it was done, she presented the apple to me with a flourish, saying, "George, have an apple." They take care of each other to the extreme, and jealousy is no exception. I only glanced at the girls dancing in the dance floor. Willow and Anna immediately stood in front of me like formidable opponents, saying, "George, you are not allowed to look. What's so interesting about these people? If you want to see, we'll let you see enough." Someone passing by saw this scene and immediately understood, casting a teasing glance at me, but the next second, the two women blocking me became stiff as if they had seen something shocking. I turned around, following their gaze, and saw a scene not far away that was obscured by the noisy atmosphere. Dressed in a work uniform, Makoto was holding a drink, surrounded by a clearly drunk delinquent girl, whose arrogant expression suggested she was saying something that made him instantly red-eyed. Seeing him endure without daring to resist, that delinquent girl even started to get physical. With their beloved in trouble, Willow and Anna held their breath, their brains not yet processing the situation, but their bodies had already reacted. Without caring about me over here, they immediately rushed over, each giving that delinquent girl a slap. The scene was suddenly chaotic. The delinquent girl was slapped until she spat blood and kept begging for mercy, while Makoto beside her was also scared and kept screaming, "Willow, Anna, you two stop fighting. If you keep going, someone will get hurt." Chapter 6. Makoto's voice finally brought the two back to their senses, and they finally stopped their actions, not forgetting to throw harsh words at the delinquent girl lying on the ground. They scolded, "Apologize, or we'll slap you every time we see you." At this moment, the delinquent girl had long sobered up and dared not say more. Seeing that they finally stopped, she hurriedly got up unsteadily to apologize. After receiving a "get lost," she scrambled away. The delinquent girl ran away, and Willow and Anna looked at Makoto with lingering fear, wanting to blame her but reluctant to do so. Finally, just sighing, they asked, "Why did you take a part-time job in a place like this?" He lowered his head submissively and explained softly, "I haven't saved enough for my tuition yet. We'll cover it for you." Upon hearing this reason, both of them were somewhat displeased with their conditions. Why did he still need to raise tuition himself? They immediately yanked the apron off him, their tone leaving no room for refusal as they said, "This place is full of shady characters. You can't come here anymore." Just as I wanted to pull him away, I suddenly remembered something and turned around to see that I had also walked over at some point. Seeing me, Willow and Anna seemed to recall the impulse from earlier, their expressions freezing for a moment, and said, "George, don't get me wrong. We're all classmates, and we'll be attending the same university in the future. We just don't want to see him go down the wrong path." Makoto said, "Mind your own business." I don't know what in this sentence struck a nerve with Makoto. He suddenly reddened his eyes, turned his head, and ran out of the hotel. As he ran, Willow and Anna didn't think about anything else. They hurriedly followed him without bothering to explain to me. Having seen enough of the show, I only felt a lack of interest. Just as I was about to call a taxi to go home, a hand suddenly reached out from behind and covered my mouth tightly. Ignoring my struggles, A few people directly dragged me into the bathroom and locked the door. It was only now that I recognized the faces of the people who had dragged me in, one of whom was surprisingly the delinquent girl who had just been slapped by Willow and Anna. I shouted in panic, "Someone, help!" It was supposed to be a bustling bar, but my cries went unanswered, and the person in front of me remained completely unfazed, even appearing more composed. She said, "You can call, but I've already hung up the repair sign outside. No one will come. Today is really lucky. I encountered a student who paid me to properly fix you. A broken bone for a red envelope. Why not?" Hearing this, I could no longer understand that these thugs were actually hired by Makoto. The earlier act of being threatened was fake. He probably just wanted to lure away Willow and Anna. The real intention was to destroy me. Seeing those thugs rushing over, I could only kick one in front of me away, then awkwardly hide in a bathroom stall to call for help. It takes time for the police to arrive, and clearly, it's too late to call for help. However, Willow and Anna haven't gone far. As long as they come back, they can definitely save me. I first called Willow, but the call went through and was automatically disconnected without her answering. I called Anna again. 1 call, 2 calls, 3 calls, after a series of over 10 calls being automatically disconnected. As the door to the cubicle was pried open by a thug, a wave of despair washed over me the moment he lunged at me with a sinister grin. Just as the thug burst through the door, I suddenly slammed into him, frantically searching for a weapon to fight back, my gaze finally landing on the aromatherapy candle holder placed beside the sink. With a bang, I ran out of the bathroom covered in blood, and just as I reached outside the bar, I saw Willow, Anna, and Makoto still there. Makoto said, "George has called you so many times. Are you really not going to answer?" There was a strange light in Makoto's eyes. Although he looked worried, there was a hint of disdain beneath it. Willow furrowed her brow and coldly scoffed. What could he possibly want? The most important thing right now is you. Promise me you won't come to places like this again. Anna was blunt and directly turned off her phone. Her voice filled with indifference as she said, "His death has nothing to do with me. The only person I care about is you. Don't worry about him for now. The most important thing for you is to quit this part-time job immediately." Chapter 7. All right. I was only here to try for a day anyway. Since you don't like me, it's fine if I quit. I just don't want to take your money. Surrounded by 2 people, Makoto pretended to be modest and lowered his head, completely hiding his pride in the shadows. Willow's brows relaxed, and a hint of a smile appeared in her eyes. She said, "Everything about me, my heart, my life, is yours. Why should I care about a trivial amount of money?" Anna also said, "From now on, you're not allowed to say such things again." When facing Makoto, Anna's voice and expression unconsciously softened a bit, and the atmosphere among the 3 was so harmonious that it seemed to leave no room for anyone else. This is Willow and Anna, who have been my childhood friends for over 10 years, and once promised to always be by my side. Yet now, for someone else, they can disregard even my life and death. I smiled slightly, said nothing and prepared to leave directly, but unexpectedly, this commotion caught the attention of a few people over there. Seeing me in such a bloodied and disheveled state, they were all taken aback and hurried over to ask, "George, what happened to you? What's going on?" I was just about to speak when Makoto, who was closely following them, suddenly spoke up and said, "I think I might have had a bit too much to drink. My head is spinning. Could someone please help me get to the hospital?" As soon as the feigned weak voice sounded, Willow and Anna's expressions changed immediately, and in an instant, they all surrounded Makoto, speaking one after another. "I'll take you there." Neither of them was willing to back down first, so they quietly competed with each other while leading him away. In an instant, I was once again left all alone, with only me remaining. The next day, I got up early, finished washing up, and went to the police station with the recording I made in the bathroom yesterday to file a report. After listening to the recording, the police immediately summoned Makoto, but a few minutes later, the person who arrived was not Makoto, but Willow and Anna. Without asking questions or showing concern, as soon as they stood in front of the police, they characterized everything as a misunderstanding, and then the several bodyguards they brought directly dragged me away. I only felt a wave of weakness. How did this police station end up like my own backyard? Once we left the police station, the 2 of them turned to me with grim expressions. "George, why did you frame us?" I had long anticipated their reaction, and I couldn't even be bothered to explain. I just took out my phone and played that audio again. "Today is really lucky. I met a student who paid me to fix you." The voice of the thug clearly reached the ears of the 2. Willow and Anna were momentarily taken aback, but in the end, they still just looked at me and said, "He is so pure and kind. How could he possibly do something like this? Can you even forge recordings now?" Listening to their unconditional trust, I actually felt a bit tempted to take revenge. "But it's really not worth sacrificing my reborn life for these few people," I said. "All right, This police station is done. I'm moving on to the next one. I couldn't be bothered to waste words with them. Breaking free from the bodyguard, I turned to leave. They didn't pursue me. Willow coldly spoke up and said, "We've already made arrangements. The entire South City won't take your case." I turned back in disbelief, looking at their dark faces, feeling as if struck by lightning. I could barely stand. Is the sky in South City really this dark? After all, we grew up together. Seeing my collapsed state, Anna softened her tone a bit and advised, "George, stop messing around. First of all, this isn't even something that should be done. Even if it were, we're all classmates, and school is starting soon. You don't need to ruin someone's future." At this moment, I truly kneel to the logic of these people. I am about to be beaten into a disability, and they actually say I shouldn't ruin someone's future. Chapter 8. I felt both angry and pained. Indeed, in their eyes, I am not even 1/10,000th as important as Makoto. I said, "Yes, he is kind, and I am malicious. I was almost ruined by someone else. How can I compare to his pity? I, the murderer, was almost ruined because I reported it, losing my reputation and future. From childhood to now, this is the first time Willow and Anna have seen me so angry and desperate." Their hearts suddenly tightened as they thought of my blood-soaked appearance from yesterday. Just as they were about to say something, I had already turned and left. In that moment of turning, I was biting my teeth so hard that they almost bled. "It's okay, it will be over soon. Soon, we won't have any more intersections in our lives." I don't know if it was because my last call that day touched them, or if it was just because Makoto still hadn't given up on having them pursue me, but in the following days, Willow and Anna would send various gifts every day to apologize. Yet I always shut the door on them, instead busying myself with putting this old house up for sale. I have already made plans to settle in City A and don't want to come back, because the location is quite good. The house was only listed for 5 days before an agent came knocking. "Mr. Wong, I have a client here who really likes this house and is willing to pay a high price for it. But that client is buying it for a deceased relative. They believe the layout of this house has good feng shui and want to burn it for the afterlife. I'm not sure if you would mind." "I don't mind." I shook my head. After all, I didn't plan to come back in the future. Whether they burn it or do something else, it has nothing to do with me. After discussing the details of the transaction, the money was quickly transferred over, and they entrusted me with the task of burning the house as well. I personally sent the agent out, and when I returned, I happened to run into Willow Anna coming back with Makoto. Willow unconsciously frowned, her gaze turning to the men who had just left and asked, "Who is he? Haven't I said it many times? Don't let salespeople in. We're not here, and it's not safe for you to be alone." Anna furrowed her brow, her voice involuntarily tinged with displeasure. Makoto said, "Hey, don't be so nervous. I believe George knows what he's doing." Noticing their concern for me, Makoto deliberately pretended to be understanding and helped me out of the situation, casually showing off the design draft in his hand, saying, "George, look, my design draft just won an international award, and the organizers notified me to go accept it." I wasn't interested in listening to him brag, and as I casually glanced over, I was about to turn away when my gaze froze on the design draft. I snatched the design draft and upon closer inspection, I realized that this design draft was exactly the same as my previous drawing, or rather, this was simply my draft. I asked, "How did you get my original draft? Do you know this is theft?" I glared angrily, a surge of rage rising in my chest, but as soon as the words left my mouth, I was interrupted by Willow frowning. She said, "This is my own original work. How could it be your draft?" Makoto also took the opportunity to chime in. "George, what are you talking about? This is the design I worked hard on. How could I have stolen yours? I know you have issues with me, but you can't just rob me of my glory like this." I couldn't be bothered to listen to Makoto argue. After all, who would admit to stealing? I clutched the design draft tightly, but my gaze was directed at Anna. This design draft, I had only shown to her. Sure enough, the moment our eyes met, she immediately averted her gaze. Unable to look at me any longer, a deep sense of helplessness rose from my heart, and when I looked back at Makoto, my attention was drawn to the safety amulet hanging around his neck. I abruptly looked at Willow, and heavily said, "Did you give the thing I gave you to him?" That safety amulet was something Willow received when she was in a coma due to a car accident a few years ago. I was so anxious and at my wit's end that I heard the safety amulet from Guhua Temple was very effective, so I went to Guhua Temple to pray for this amulet with 3 bows and 9 knocks. But now, she has given this amulet to Makoto. Chapter 9. Willow also nervously averted her gaze, not daring to meet my eyes, but at that moment Makoto suddenly added fuel to the fire, boasting, "I like Willow, so she gave it to me. Is this really that important?" As soon as the words were spoken, Willow and Anna instinctively shielded Makoto behind them, fearing that I might accidentally hurt Makoto in a moment of anger. But I merely closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and when I opened them again, all that remained in my gaze was calm. I said, "From now on, I won't share my design drafts with you right away." I first looked at Anna, and after saying this, I turned to Willow. I said, "From now on, I won't seek peace for you either." After saying that, I swiftly turned around, closed the door, and no longer wished to have any entanglements with them. I haven't seen Willow and Anna again. Their apology messages come through like clockwork every day, but I know they aren't apologizing because they truly understand their mistake, but because if they don't marry me they will lose Makoto. This kind of day continued until the day before school started. I finally went to our former secret base one last time. After my parents divorced, Willow and Anna found out that I liked orchids, and bought a piece of land in my name, filling it with various precious orchids. In the past, I would come here every time I was sad, and they could always find me here. Tomorrow, I will set off for City A, and this will probably be my last time here. But when I arrived at the secret base, I found that the orchids inside were all in disarray, the petals scattered on the ground by Makoto for the sake of taking pictures, while Willow and Anna, who had once lovingly planted a garden full of orchids for me, were now indulgently taking pictures of Makoto, who had ruined everything. It wasn't until they heard the noise and saw me standing at the entrance that the two of them became flustered and hurried over, saying, "George, let us explain. We just saw that he liked taking pictures here, so we..." But I cannot see even a hint of the anger and sadness they imagined in my eyes. "All I feel is calm," I said. "It's fine. You all just keep filming." After saying that, I turned and left. "George. George, wait." Two voices called out from behind me at the same time, but I didn't even turn my head until someone grabbed my hands, one on the left and one on the right, and only then did I finally stop and look at them. Willow said, "Tomorrow when school starts, we will go together. You said you would give us the answer tomorrow." Willow held onto my hand tightly, but a strange sense of unease rose in my heart. Anna seemed to be competing with her and also quickly spoke up. "Don't go with him. Come with me. I'm also waiting for your answer." The two were secretly competing against each other. I exerted a little force and easily threw both of them off, giving a slight smile and said, "Don't worry, I've already made my choice." After saying that, I turned and walked away, leaving Willow and Anna standing there. The feeling of unease only grew stronger, as if something was spiraling out of control, disappearing from their bodies. The next day, I packed my bags and was about to block Willow, Anna, and Makoto when my phone suddenly pinged with two messages. Willow sent, "George, I'm sorry. I have something urgent today and can't go with you anymore." Anna sent a message, "George, I can't go with you today. Something came up last minute." Seeing these two messages, I instinctively opened Makoto's Moments, and sure enough, he had just updated a post that said, "University is great. So many seniors are eager to show me around." I let out a light laugh. Willow and Anna's so-called urgent matters were just their fear of Makoto being taken away by someone else. I didn't expose them. I just blocked all their contacts one by one. I dragged my suitcase out, taking one last look at the house I had lived in for 18 years. Then I set a fire, igniting it with my own hands. The old house gradually disappeared in the flames. I turned around with my luggage and never looked back. Chapter 10. South University, Freshman Registration Area. Willow and Anna were the center of attention as soon as they enrolled, and naturally, the flattery they received from Makoto also drew admiration and envy from everyone. He waved goodbye to them with a beaming smile, urging them to go pick up George. He said, "Didn't George say he would make a choice among you today? You should go pick him up, so he doesn't end up delaying things." Anna rolled her eyes and said, "He said he had already made up his mind and would speak today, didn't he?" Willow said, "No way. George is not the kind of person who goes back on his word." Willow considered things more thoroughly than Anna did, so after dropping people off, she did not refuse Makoto's suggestion. Willow said, "We'll go pick him up later. He won't be angry." Back at the freshman registration area, the two stood there, enough to catch anyone's eye. People came to flirt like fish crossing a river, and after sending wave after wave of those seeking contact information away, the person they were waiting for still hadn't shown up. Willow muttered to herself, "Where is George? The freshman orientation is almost over." As the sky grew darker, Willow frowned and took out her phone, just about to call me when Anna suddenly raised her voice. "Willow, something's wrong." Because they were close, Willow's brow twitched, and her expression darkened as she shot her a glare and asked, "What are you making a fuss about?" Anna said, "George's house burned down. No wonder he didn't come today. I'm calling him right now to see where he is." She hurriedly dropped this sentence and pulled out George's number, dialed it, but in the end, she found out she was actually blocked. Anna, in disbelief, found his friend again and edited a message to send out. "Why did you block my number?" After pressing send, What appeared before her eyes was the glaring red exclamation mark right after the message. She tried every way to find his contact information, and without exception, all were blocked. Anna looked at Willow with a dark expression and shook her head. She said, "He blocked all my contact information. You try." Hearing her words, Willow was momentarily taken aback. Recalling George's mention of making a choice today, her expression relaxed a bit, and with newfound confidence, she found his number and dialed. She said, "We are all friends. Even if you decide to choose me, it wouldn't mean blocking you." The cheerful tone abruptly stopped upon hearing the familiar mechanical female voice on the phone. She froze for a moment, a sense of foreboding rising in her heart. After trying all the contact methods in the same way, the two finally discovered that George had actually blocked both of them. Willow said, "Is it really such a big deal just because he wasn't sent to school? Is it necessary to be so petty? And now he's even playing the blocking game. How childish." Willow let out a scoff. "Always thinking he was just sulking." Anna said, "Forget it. I really wasn't nice to George a while ago. Let's wait until he comes to enroll and then we can properly advise him." Anna's originally unpleasant expression improved a lot after discovering that Willow was also blocked, and she even took the initiative to say something nice. Thinking back on the events of this period, Willow finally felt some of the frustration lift, but her expression still remained somewhat gloomy. The gloom brought on by being blocked momentarily made them forget about Wang's house burning down. It was only when Makoto called to ask who George ultimately chose that they finally remembered. They said, "Wang's house caught fire, but he blocked our contact. How about you give him a call and ask?" The two tentatively spoke up, and Makoto was quite agreeable on the other end. But before long, he sent a pitiful expression, saying, "George blocked me too. I can't find him either." Originally just extremely frustrated about being blocked, the two of them now became outright furious. Willow said angrily, "Can you believe he even blocked us? We may have wronged him these days, but we didn't even hold him accountable for his slander. And now he's taking it a step further." Anna said angrily, "When he comes over tomorrow, he must apologize." Chapter 11. The next day, to avoid missing anything, Willow and Anna arrived even earlier than the teacher responsible for welcoming new students. But as time passed, and the reporting time was about to end, George still hadn't shown up, and they couldn't help but worry if he couldn't come because of the fire at the Wang family's house. While pondering whether to take a quick look at Wang's house, Willow watched the last student arriving for registration pull out their admission notice. Looking at the admission notice that was identical to hers despite being from a different college, she suddenly recalled the day the admission notices were delivered. Later that day, they went to find Makoto. If her admission notice was the same as Anna's because they were from the same college, then why was Makoto's admission notice for the art major identical to theirs? Moreover, after waiting for so long these past 2 days, they had never seen another version of the admission notice, and suddenly another guess floated into her mind. She suddenly grabbed Anna, quickly walking over to a senior who was packing up and preparing to end the orientation, and quickly asked, "Are there any green admission notices from South University?" The senior was taken aback and quickly shook her head. She said, "No, the admission notices from South University have always been red over the years." As soon as she said this, Anna, who had just been puzzled about why Willow suddenly dragged her over, also froze, clearly recalling the green color she had seen when opening George's admission notice that day. South University has never issued a green admission notice, so where did George's admission notice come from? In a moment when the contact was blocked, both of their faces suddenly turned pale, and their minds went blank. It's impossible. They clearly agreed to take the entrance exam for South University together. With his top scores in the city, there was no way she could attend a school he didn't qualify for. He must have changed his application himself. The two exchanged a glance, seeing the seriousness in each other's eyes, and immediately forgot everything else, rushing out of the school. By the time they returned to Wang's house, they saw a group of strangers in suits surrounding what had become a ruin of the old Wang family home, talking about something. "Isn't one of them the men that George sent out earlier that they saw?" Anna asked. "Who are you? What are you doing here?" Various news reports flashed through Anna's mind about criminals confirming that the homeowner lived alone before striking, her heart racing uncontrollably. Willow thought of this too, but looking at the group of well-dressed arsonists in front of her, she felt that something was off. Willow said, "Did you start this fire? Do you know that arson is a serious crime?" She kept her eyes on the group, her gaze vigilant, while the agent, hearing their words, felt utterly confused. The agent replied, "This house was specifically bought to be burned, and a special person was hired to watch the fire, ensuring it wouldn't spread to other places." "How is that a serious crime? You really are quite strange," Anna scolded. "You're talking nonsense." Anna was inherently willful and unruly. Seeing that they refused to admit it, she immediately decided to call the police. She said, "I know the owner of this house. He has lived here for 18 years. How could I not know that his house was meant to be burned? You are really lying without any preparation." The agent, seeing that their group was being treated as arsonists, was initially a bit angry, but after hearing their words, it seemed they were old acquaintances of the previous owner, and they indeed looked like they were of the same age, so he softened his attitude and began to explain. "It's like this. I am a real estate agent from XIN in real estate. Some time ago, the previous owner listed this house with our company and sold it. The buyer is this gentleman beside me, and he indeed bought it specifically to burn for his deceased relatives. The previous owner, Mr. Wang, was also aware of and agreed to this matter," he patiently explained, but the two people in front of him completely ignored what he was saying and even directly called the police over. Willow said, "Do you think I would believe your nonsense? This is the only property left to George by his parents. How could he possibly agree to burn it down?" Chapter 12. The agent also considered showing them the contract, but Willow and Anna were convinced they were frauds and arsonists. So he thought that even if the contract was presented, it would only be seen as a forgery by them, and it would end up being torn apart, until both sides were taken to the police station. Still insisting on their own stories, Willow said, "Officer Wang, these are the arsonists. Hurry up and arrest them." The agent argued persistently, and seeing that they were not making any progress, simply changed tactics and demanded the purchase contract from another man. Slamming it down on the table, he said, "Officer, it's clearly those two girls who are being unreasonable. This contract is written in black and white, clear as day, yet they insist we forged it and call us frauds. We even want to sue them for defamation." The police officer took the contract, examined it carefully for a moment, then looked at Willow and Anna with a somewhat helpless expression, and smiled apologetically. "Ladies, this contract is indeed genuine. No issues here, and as for the arson matter, it certainly doesn't count." Hearing the police officer's words, the two were taken aback, snatching the contract from the officer's hands and flipping through it carefully. The signature on the last page. Wasn't it George after all? Suddenly, a surge of anger welled up from the bottom of her heart. Willow and Anna laughed in anger, having never noticed before how well George could act, changing his major, blocking them, selling his house and burning it down. He did so many things right under their noses, yet he could still pretend as if nothing happened, saying he would tell them the answer on the first day of school. Who exactly did he choose? Is he trying to not choose anyone and just sneak away by himself? But thinking of this, both of them felt a twinge of panic. If they couldn't catch George, what would they do about Makoto on her side? Do I really have to watch Makoto disappear from my life forever? No, this matter cannot be known to Makoto. Just as this thought rose from the depths of her heart, a phone rang. Willow looked down and saw it was a call from Makoto. Her heart skipped a beat, and without caring about the situation here, she hurriedly walked away a bit to answer the call. She asked, "What's wrong?" When Anna saw Willow leave, she instinctively followed. As soon as she entered, she heard Makoto's voice on the other end of the phone. "Willow, has George reported in? Did he say which one of you he chose?" The two of them looked awkward, yet neither dared to tell him the truth, so they could only vaguely brush the matter aside. Willow said, He hasn't said yet. He mentioned that today is just for registration and doesn't count as the official start of school. We have to wait until the first day of classes for that." Seeing Willow struggling to find her words, Anna snatched the phone and awkwardly explained a few things. Upon hearing this response, Makoto's eyes flickered. He said, "What? George is acting like this again. He can't possibly like both of you and can't decide, right?" He subtly placed the Playboy hat on George's head, and at that moment, both of them were preoccupied with not letting him find out that George had never even gone to South University. Naturally, whatever he said was taken as truth, and they even echoed a few of his words. In the end, he asked a question with a hint of disappointment. "You can't expect us to stay by his side forever, right? But the person we like is you, and we want to be with you." Makoto replied, "Let George make the first choice. Anyway, you have to pursue him first. Otherwise I will." Before Makoto could finish her words, she was interrupted by the two in unison, saying, "We will pursue him. You are not allowed to say anything about leaving." The two of them were over here flirting and chatting, and after putting away their phones, they directly left the police station, completely forgetting that there were still a few people they had brought in. Leaving Officer Wang to apologize to each one of them and personally escort them out, there was no way around it. After all, he was just a small police officer, and he couldn't afford to offend either side. Soon, Willow and Anna returned to South University, originally intending to sort out George's enrollment issues, but unexpectedly discovered something else in the process. Chapter 13. For convenience, Willow Anna did not stay in the school dormitory. Instead, They lived in the apartment that Lou's father and Sue's father had prepared for them off campus, and they used their own money to buy the adjacent apartment for Makoto. I originally just wanted to subtly inquire if he knew about the recent events related to George, so I went to the apartment to find him. Even though the lights were on, no one answered the door when they knocked. Worried that something might have happened to him, the two directly used the key to open the door and walked in. The bedroom door was not closed tightly, and Makoto's sharp, piercing voice came through without any obstruction. He shouted, "I asked you to take care of George, but you didn't do it either, did you? You've asked for money time and time again. Are you really never going to stop? You heard the phone call just now, and you should know how much Willow and Anna love me. They are among the top wealthy heiresses in South City, and in front of me, they act like dogs, coming and going at my command. We tell them to chase whoever we want, and even if you expose these things, so what? Do you think they would believe it? Even the childhood friend who grew up with them for 15 years can't compare to me. I could knock him out and throw him into the sea, and they would still come to rescue me first. Believe it or not, I don't even need to say it myself. As long as you dare to get involved with me, you will end up with no place to be buried in their hands." Willow and Anna became increasingly alarmed and fearful as they listened. They had never imagined that the usually gentle and harmless Makoto was actually like this behind their backs. Nor did they think that the person who almost got George killed was truly someone he had found. Those audio recordings were not fabricated by George out of jealousy, and even that time he fell into the sea was because of him. Looking back at their actions during those times, they realized just how cruel they had been. But Makoto was never like this in front of them before. Being deceived by the men who has always been cherished, and even being belittled to the point of becoming a dog that cannot leave him. They actually followed his words to hurt their childhood friend George, whom they had known for 15 years, step by step leading to a breaking point, and in the end, they became a well-behaved dog in his eyes. In that moment, Willow and Anna suddenly realized that they had been a joke all these years. Anna, who was already hot-tempered, couldn't help but feel her anger boiling inside her at this moment. She kicked the door open with a bang, creating a loud noise. Willow did not stop her fury. At this moment, her expression was equally grim, her dark eyes fixed on Makoto, making him feel terrified. The sound of his heart pounding was deafening. The violent beats seemed as if they were about to burst out from his chest. He carefully recalled the words he had just said, his face suddenly turning as pale as paper. He had just said too many things he shouldn't have. Seeing their current attitudes, Makoto sat on the ground, his face ashen. He wanted to defend himself but didn't know how to explain, only able to pray that what they heard would be less, just a little less. Willow asked, "Aren't you going to say something?" Willow looked at him calmly, but it made Makoto feel as if he had become a lifeless object in her eyes, a tremendous panic enveloping him, and in his confusion, he could only crawl towards them using all fours. He pleaded, "No, that's not it. Willow, Anna, you have to let me explain. I didn't mean it that way," Anna replied. "Well, go ahead, we're listening. Tell us how it feels to be chased like a dog. Explain how you pushed George into the sea, and how you spent money hiring people to try to ruin George." With every word she spoke, his face grew paler, until by the last sentence, he was completely at a loss for words. Makoto was trembling all over, her heart in a state of utter chaos. They heard it, they all heard it. What should he do? What else could he do? Chapter 14. Makoto said, "No, I didn't. It was all." His gaze searched everywhere for a reason to absolve himself, finally landing on the phone that had just fallen to the ground in shock. An idea surfaced in his mind, and he seized it like a lifeline, suddenly pointing at the phone. He said, "Willow, Anna, that was never my intention. It was that person. He has been causing me trouble. I just..." Before he could finish speaking, he heard himself being slapped hard, his whole body sliding half a meter on the ground before stopping after hitting the corner of the bed. A sharp pain shot through his back. Makoto, however, dared not show it, only managing to put on a pitiful expression, because in the past, whenever he made that face, they would all rush over, feeling sorry for him, but this time he found that they were just looking at him coldly, no longer softening their hearts for him. Seeing that they had already made up their minds not to let him go, he simply decided to give up as well. He said, "Yes, I am malicious. I am jealous of him, George, who is just an orphan, yet because of his wealthy young master status, he is pursued by everyone. I am jealous of what I can never obtain, while he can easily get it. I just want to see him being played around by you all, but it's only because of my one sentence. But, Willow, Anna, do you think you are so noble by blaming me here? Don't joke around. Have I forced you to do anything other than to pursue George? He almost got ruined but couldn't even report it. Isn't that your own doing? I never asked you all to come save me when he fell into the water, nor did I ask you to stop him from reporting it. And I certainly didn't force you to give me his design draft and safety amulet. On what grounds do you blame me? Makoto finally regained his original appearance, even though the people in front of him were Willow and Anna, whom he would never have dared to provoke before. The words spoken at this moment were enough to pierce the heart. Willow stopped in his tracks, his gaze sharp, piercing directly at Makoto. He was so scared that he momentarily lost his breath, and finally realized what he had just said. In a state of fear and trepidation, he felt that it was nothing much after all. After all, they never intended to let him off the hook, so why continue to pretend in front of them? Anna said. Makoto, we were merely deceived by you. You are malicious, and yet you want to drag us down with you. You can't possibly think that just these few words could affect us, right? Anna smirked mockingly and maliciously, her gaze scanning the room while looking around. She didn't forget to continue provoking him. She said, even if what you said is true, so what? We will still be the objects of admiration, while you will only be a rat in the gutter. The fact that this house has been lived in by a rat like you makes it feel dirty. When faced with someone she doesn't like, Anna never understood what tenderness meant. In the past, she liked Makoto and was willing to cherish him, but once she discovered he wasn't as wonderful as she had imagined, her affection retracted just as quickly. Makoto glared at them, filled with resentment. Didn't they also despise George in every way? He had only designed a few things for George, so why were they treating him like this? He said, I'm a rat in the gutter. So what are you? Your grades depend on me, and your wealth relies on the Liu and Su families behind you. At least everything I have is based on my own efforts. But what about you? Without me and the Liu Su families, would you be just another filthy bug in the gutter? If it weren't for the Liu Su families, do you think I would care about your affection? Chapter 15. Makoto gritted his teeth and slowly stood up, his eyes filled with resentment. He hated George. If it weren't for him, how could everything have turned into what it is now? But similarly, he also hated Willow and Anna. They said they loved him, yet they could easily turn their hands against him. Makoto's words completely enraged Willow and Anna. Their faces were terrifyingly dark as they looked at him, but then they suddenly smiled. Willow said, if you do something wrong, you must pay the price. Willow no longer troubled Makoto, just gave he a deep look before turning away after leaving this remark. Anna followed her out, and as for Makoto, the subsequent matters didn't require their intervention. Others would handle it. The urgent priority is to quickly find out where George has gone. However, Willow and Anna wanted to know, yet found that only a few people knew his whereabouts. George's parents divorced, and he was abandoned as a child, never contacted again. He didn't have many friends. His best friends growing up were Willow and Anna, but now, they were all blocked. His house was sold and burned down, leaving only a pile of ashes, with no clues left behind. Willow suddenly remembered something at that moment, took out her phone, and dialed a number. The call connected quickly. In her urgency, she didn't even greet the person before getting straight to the point. Teacher Lisa, did George ask you to change his major later? The teacher replied. Yes, he changed to North City University. I told him his grades were more than enough for North City University. I don't know what he was thinking before, insisting on applying to South University. It's not that South University is bad, but if you can attend the highest institution, it's naturally better to go to the highest institution. Fortunately, he finally came around in the end. As soon as I mentioned my aspiration, Teacher Lisa started to ramble on and on. Willow couldn't be bothered to listen, and hung up the phone as soon as she got the news. But Anna, who had been quietly waiting on the side, suddenly froze when she heard the name North City University. North City University, City A, was 1,884 kilometers away from the South City where they were locked in. He actually ran all the way to such a distant place by himself. He hated them so much that the once timid George, who was most afraid of being alone, actually dared to run all the way to City A just to avoid them. Willow glanced at the silent Anna and asked with a deep gaze, are you going to find him? Of course I am. Anna looked up at Willow and answered with great certainty. She was going to find George to tell him that those past actions were not her true intentions. She had merely been deceived, and they had never truly intended to sever ties with him. And upon realizing the meaning in Willow's eyes, Anna understood that her thoughts were the same as her own. North City University study. After I finished registering, I received the dormitory key. There are 4 beds in the dormitory, and I was the last one to arrive. After exchanging greetings, a few people began to organize their luggage. I was the first to finish. I have very few belongings. Besides the bedding provided by the school, I only brought a few pieces of clothing. Next to my bed is a boy from South City named David, who wears black framed glasses but doesn't seem dull at all. Instead, he appears lively and cheerful. Seeing that I had so few things, he curiously came over. He asked, why do you have so few things? Chapter 16. I nodded and explained softly, most of them can be bought. Anyway, nothing is particularly important. So I plan to buy them when I get here. Hearing what I said, David immediately felt envious. He said, "What foresight. When I came here, my mom stuffed me with a lot of things, saying that I would use them here, but in the end, I was almost exhausted just carrying the suitcase all the way." Although he was complaining with his mouth, there was a hidden sense of happiness in his words. My dad and mom are a couple arranged by their families. Due to their incompatible personalities, they have been arguing constantly. They have little affection for me, a child they had as a task, and naturally, I have never really felt my parents' love. Later, my dad and mom divorced, and I became a burden that both of them wanted to get rid of. At this moment, hearing David talk about the troubles of happiness, I also smiled at him and said, "That is also their love for you." After packing up my luggage and familiarizing myself with the campus, the sky gradually darkened. After a whole day of busyness, I fell into a deep sleep, feeling completely exhausted. The next morning marked the official start of classes at North City University. I woke up early to wash up, but when I went downstairs, I heard a commotion. The crowd was buzzing. Who are those two people? I didn't see them during the freshman orientation. Just because you're in charge of freshman orientation doesn't mean you've seen everyone. But they are so beautiful. I've never heard of them before. So they must be new this year. Are they waiting for someone? I wonder who is so lucky to be waited on by two stunning beauties. The murmurs reached my ears. I raised an eyebrow, feeling a bit curious about what kind of beauties could draw such a crowd here. Following the flow of people, I unexpectedly saw two familiar faces. It's Willow and Anna. The two stood by the campus avenue, their eyes scanning the crowd, and with just one glance, they locked onto me as I had just come downstairs. "George!" The simultaneous shout was enough to catch attention. The two of them took a long stride and hurried towards me. Seeing this, I instinctively turned my steps, naturally changing direction and walking towards the other side. As I walked, it turned into a light jog, until suddenly I felt a resistance at my wrist, forcing me to stop. I looked down and saw that Willow and Anna had caught up. Grabbing my hand, I pulled my hand away forcefully, looking at them with a hint of caution in my eyes. "What are you two doing here? The distance between South City and City A is almost 2,000 kilometers. How could they suddenly come here?" Anna asked. "George, why did you block us? Didn't you say you would give us an answer on the first day of school, telling us who you really choose?" Anna bit her lip, feeling a bit wronged. Even if they had indeed favored Makoto a bit before, they have been childhood friends for 15 years, growing up together. How could their relationship become so strained? She thought that by saying this, she was giving me a way out, and as long as I could take the opportunity to step down, everything would be fine. But unexpectedly, I didn't care for the way out she offered at all. I said, "Haven't you two ladies had enough of the game yet?" I smirked sarcastically, leaving Anna and Willow completely confused, but they just assumed I was still upset, so they advised me. "George, did you misunderstand something?" Willow tried to reach for my hand again, but I avoided it directly. I put away the smile on my face and looked at them with coldness in my eyes. I said, "I thought my meaning was very clear. Willow, Anna, if you like Makoto, just go after him yourselves. It's not like I'm forcing you to stay by my side." "What? Just because I didn't accept your pursuit, does Makoto have to threaten to disappear? Since you all like him so much and are willing to disregard everything for him, I'll step back. You three can be all lovey-dovey and entangled as you wish, but I beg you, considering we've known each other for at least 15 years, please stay away from me, okay? I really don't understand. I have already hidden 1,000 miles away in City A. Why can't they just stay away from me?" And Willow and Anna in front of me turned stiff the moment they heard what I said. Chapter 17. Willow said, "No, that's not it, George. We all like you. When have we ever liked Makoto? Are you misunderstanding something?" Willow forced a smile, her voice becoming hesitant, her eyes darting away. But thinking about how she had already severed ties with Makoto, she found her confidence returning as she spoke. Anna said, "Yeah, George, the people we like have always been you, right? We are all still waiting for your answer. How could we like someone else?" Anna continued Willow's words, her gaze returning to a deep affection after a brief moment of daze. "Anyway, apart from Makoto and them, in the eyes of everyone else, the person they like is me. When have I ever had anything to do with Makoto?" Thinking of this, they also felt a sense of calm in their hearts, until I turned on my phone's recording, and the recording played their voices. They said, "Don't make us chase George, okay? We can't pretend anymore. Every moment with George is torture. The person we really like is you. Why can't we stay by your side? Are you going to persuade him?" "I'm too lazy to go. I'm tired of pretending. If you want to go, you go. I want to go find him. He should have received the notice by now and must be eager to share his joy with us. I want to go find him. His death has nothing to do with me. The only person I care about has always been you. George, stop messing around. First of all, This isn't something to joke about. Even if it were, we're all classmates. And school is starting soon. You don't need to ruin someone's future. A series of audio recordings were released, and I still maintained a cold expression, but my voice carried a hint of sarcasm as I said, "These. Plus the fact that one of you stole my design draft to give to him, and another gave away the safety amulet I begged for, while making excuses that you couldn't come to deliver it to me, only to run off to help someone else move their luggage. If your love is such that you need to step on your partner to be a stepping stone for others, I have nothing to say and cannot bear that." Willow and Anna turned pale as soon as the first audio was released. Did George actually know all the truth long ago? As I was about to leave, Willow and Anna felt an inexplicable emptiness in their hearts, as if something had completely drifted away from them. Anna still felt a bit unwilling and wanted to argue for herself a few more times. She said, "But don't you have nothing to lose either? Can't we? Based on the affection we've had for the past 15 years, just pretend that everything from before never happened?" Willow said, "George, I know we were wrong to you in the past. Can we forget the things that happened before and start over?" The pain in Willow's eyes was evident. She really couldn't accept that their 15-year relationship had been shattered because of a sinister and malicious Makoto. Looking at their expressions, still completely unrepentant, as if not agreeing to this made them the most heartless and unfeeling people, I could only find it laughable. How can they take it for granted like this? What does it mean I have nothing to lose? So in their eyes, I was knocked out and thrown into the sea, which they called nothing lost. I almost became useless but couldn't seek justice for myself, which they called nothing lost. I worked hard to create a design draft only for it to be used by others, which they called nothing lost. I replied, "No need, Willow, Anna. I never realized before that your foundation was already rotten." I shook my head with a smile. I looked at their faces, which clearly hadn't changed, yet at this moment felt incredibly unfamiliar. By the way, from the moment they said that, even if Makoto really intended to ruin me, I still didn't need to destroy his future. From that point on, they were nothing more than pigs and dogs in my eyes. Chapter 18. Anna still wanted to hold on, but at the moment her hand reached out, I forcefully swatted it away. "Don't touch me, I feel dirty." I looked at them, my eyes filled with deep disgust. I said, "Now you all remember our 15 years of friendship, but when you came to mock me because of Makoto's words, did you ever think about our 15 years of friendship? When I was knocked out and thrown into the sea, did you think about our 15 years of friendship while you all went to save Makoto? When I was almost ruined and reached out for your help, did you think about our 15 years of friendship? When you were in cahoots with the entire South City police station to prevent me from suing Makoto, did you think about our 15 years of friendship? When you took my design draft and safety amulet to placate Makoto, did you think about our 15 years of friendship? So, now you come to tell me about 15 years of friendship. Is it because you no longer want your dear ones?" I thoroughly pierced through their disguises. Willow turned pale and then flushed, wanting to retort but not knowing where to start. I said, "I don't have time to play house with you. Step aside." I didn't want to look at them any longer and walked straight past them. Behind me, Anna held back her tears, watching my back and ultimately couldn't help but redden her eyes, murmuring, "George, we were just deceived back then. We will prove it to you. When we reveal the truth to the public, will you still be able to forgive us?" Willow didn't know. She only knew that returning everything to its original state might be their only chance to seek George's forgiveness. The two of them bought plane tickets and returned to South City that same day. Since George cared about Makoto's presence, they would prove to him that even if they once had feelings for Makoto, that was just in the past. And now, in the future, there would only be George in their lives. On the official opening day of South University, a big news story broke. A certain freshman at South University has been behaving poorly. Out of jealousy for a classmate's excellence, he deliberately hired someone to harm that classmate. And even the award-winning work he presented not long ago was stolen from that classmate's original manuscript. Not only that, he also intentionally injured a classmate at a gathering and threw him into the sea, suspected of attempted murder. Because no names were mentioned, everyone was still speculating whether this incident was true or not, and if it was, who this person could be. At the welcome party, under the gaze of the crowd, the one performing on stage, Makoto, was taken away by the police. This has also completely confirmed the rumor. Some people recalled that on the day of the report, the two new campus beauties from South University seemed to have a close relationship with that freshman. When they quietly inquired, they saw one shaking their head and the other sighing. Willow said, "We were classmates since high school. Back then, he seemed harmless, and seeing his pitiful look, we brought him into our circle. Who would have thought that he would actually harm our friend, whom we grew up with, out of jealousy?" Anna said, "Yes, the person who got hurt was our friend. We never expected that we would let the wolf into the house. It turns out we harmed him." They looked completely in the dark. only learning the truth today, their faces filled with heartache, which made the classmates who came to inquire about the situation sigh in sympathy. Someone said, "It's really hard to know a person's heart by just looking at their face. You can't blame yourselves entirely for this. After all, when we first met him, we never expected him to be so malicious and shameless." Makoto was completely kicked out of the apartment by them. Willow and Anna packed all his belongings neatly and threw them out. Chapter 19. That night, after Willow and Anna left, Makoto thought they would be busy chasing after George, but the next day they returned. This was because of their earlier statement that one must pay the price for making mistakes. Later, he was terrified that they would come back to take revenge on him, but he didn't expect to be afraid of having peace for a while. Makoto thought they were just distancing themselves from him, but they didn't really want to do anything. He finally relaxed and began to shrink his presence, thinking that as long as he could safely get through these years of university, he could sell the gifts they once gave him for money, escape far away from here, and with his degree, he would surely be able to live well. As for the welcome party, it was simply because he had signed up during that initial period and could no longer back out. Now, without Willow and Anna to support him, he naturally lost the right to be willful and could only pray that nothing would go wrong at the party. But it was at that moment that Makoto suddenly noticed that the people around him were whispering about something. When he looked over, he saw nothing. He thought he was just overthinking, but on the night of the welcome party, while he was performing on stage, a group of police suddenly appeared and took him away. He finally realized that the person they had been discussing all this time was actually him. He shouted, "I want to see Willow and Anna. I want to see them." He was making a scene and refusing to cooperate, but Willow and Anna were no longer intimidated by him. Instead, they directly submitted all the evidence to the police. By the time the news reached me, everything had already come to a conclusion. Makoto was sentenced to 3 years in prison for intentional injury, and despite the solid evidence, he still refused to admit guilt or show remorse, ultimately resulting in his expulsion from South University. On the day everything was settled, City A welcomed its first snowfall. Willow and Anna were waiting under the dormitory building with umbrellas, and from a distance, I gazed at them. After a few months apart, they seemed a bit more composed. It was as if they had finally put a lingering concern to rest, both of them carrying a sense of relaxation. Seeing me approach, smiles of certainty appeared at the corners of their mouths. "George." I was walking too slowly, and Willow and Anna couldn't wait any longer. They stepped forward towards me with smiles just beginning to bloom, both trying to lower their voices. Seeing the person in front of her smile and wave at them, Willow and Anna both breathed a sigh of relief, and just as they felt a little more at ease, they saw me walk straight past them, running towards what was behind them. After a brief moment of surprise, both turned around at the same time, only to realize that I wasn't greeting them, but a boy. I said, "David, it's snowing quite heavily today. What made you suddenly think of bringing me food? You weren't this kind before when the weather was nicer." David grinned and said, "Isn't it because it snowed? It's the first snow of the year. So meaningful. I wanted to ask you for a favor. I don't look good in photos. Could you take a few for me?" I said, "All right, for the sake of this meal, I'll reluctantly agree." He said, "Good brother, you're the best." Just as I was about to leave with David, Anna, in a moment of panic, quickly called out to me, "George." I didn't stop my steps, still leading David forward, but David curiously turned back to look behind him. "George, why do I hear someone calling you?" I asked. "Really? Maybe you heard wrong." I walked on without changing my expression, but I hadn't gone far when someone grabbed my wrist again. I paused for a moment and sighed. Why do these two people always seem to haunt us? Chapter 20. George, why are you hiding from us? Anna's tone carried an imperceptible grievance as she held my hand, refusing to let go no matter how much I tried to shake her off, with another hand resting on David's shoulder. Willow, who lagged a step behind, couldn't grab my other hand and could only block my path to prevent me from running away again after breaking free. David looked at this, looked at that, and finally glanced at me, whose mouth was slightly downturned beside him. Always feeling like I shouldn't be here at this moment, knowing I can't avoid it, I simply decided not to hide anymore. Letting go of David's shoulder, I said, "David, you go wait for me over there for a bit. I have some things I want to discuss with her and them alone." David naturally wouldn't refuse, pointing to the playground not far away, waving at me and saying, "Then I'll go over first. If you're done chatting, come to the playground." I nodded, watching David run towards the playground. Only then did I turn back to look at Willow and Anna, reaching out to pry open Anna's fingers one by one. The smile that had just appeared when facing David now completely retracted. As I coldly glared at them, my eyes filled with impatience, I asked, "Go ahead. What are you all here for this time?" The stark contrast in attitudes pained the two of them. Anna lowered her eyes and humbled herself. She said, "George, We've thought carefully about what you said last time. At that moment, our handling of the situation was indeed inappropriate, and we owe you an apology. So, she presented the box with both hands in front of him, and Willow also timely handed over a judgment document. Anna continued. We have already explained to the organizers about the last design draft. It was Makoto who stole your design draft to enter the competition, so this award should belong to you. Also, regarding the previous incidents where Makoto attempted to harm you, we have already sent him to prison. George, we have already sent them all back to where they belong. Can we start over? I received the trophy and the certificate of honor, along with the design draft that had my name re-signed on it, and that judgment document. Indeed, many have already returned to their original positions. My design draft, Makoto's ending. It seems that everything has truly returned to its place, but for me, it is already too late. Moreover, not everything has really returned to its original position. I carefully put away that design draft, while the rest of the items were sent back unchanged. Seeing that the trophy and judgment document had all been returned, Willow and Anna were taken aback and asked, George, what do you mean by this? I said, it's winter now, and it's quite cold. If Miss Lu and Miss Sue have nothing else to do, please feel free to leave. After dropping this line, I was about to turn and leave. Seeing that I was going to walk away, Anna suddenly became a bit angry and raised her voice unconsciously. She said, George, didn't we help you seek the justice you wanted? What exactly are you still dissatisfied with? George, even if you want to make a scene, you should know when to stop. Willow still stood in front of me, but her tightly furrowed brows revealed what was on her mind at that moment. She also felt that it was me who didn't understand that it was too much to step down when encountering a staircase. Anna's raised voice attracted the attention of passers-by, who began to whisper among themselves, and some even started to point and gossip directly. Willow and Anna had never experienced such grievances. They pressed their lips together, and a gloomy atmosphere surrounded them, but in the end, they didn't say anything more. I was not afraid of those gazes. After all, from any perspective, I didn't feel I was in the wrong. With a sneer, I didn't hide my disdain for them. I said, I'm dissatisfied. I'm just being reasonable. Anna, Willow, I never asked you to do anything, did I? Moreover, helping me, didn't you both contribute to the current situation? Chapter 21. If it weren't for you two stopping me from reporting the case back then, if it weren't for you stealing my design draft to please your crush, would I still need to wait until now for you to handle this? My straightforward words made both of them blush, leaving them speechless. I said, South City is city quite far. Young ladies, I hope we won't meet again. I was about to withdraw my last glance and leave, but just as I walked a short distance, I heard Anna's voice behind me. She said, I'm sorry, George. I spoke without thinking earlier, but we truly know we were wrong. Do you really have to be so heartless, not even willing to give us a chance to make amends? By the end, her voice was faintly trembling. After a long silence, Willow finally spoke again, saying, and besides, you promised to tell us your final choice. I turned back to look at the still stubborn Willow and Anna who were standing in place and refusing to leave. In the drifting snowflakes, the figures of the two appeared lonely and desolate. I suddenly remembered the year we first met. It was also on a snowy day like this, when I was just 3 years old, being led by the butler behind my dad and mom, who were each busy with their own affairs. After bringing me here, the butler also began to handle the matters of the servants, and I saw Willow and Anna playing together in another yard through the fence. Their parents were watching from behind, afraid that if they weren't careful, something might happen. The two playing looked at me with eager eyes, waving at me. Brother, do you want to come and play together? We grew up together, from the same kindergarten to the same elementary school, middle school, and high school, but from the moment Makoto appeared in our first year of high school, the trajectory of fate began to change. In fact, when I think back carefully, I still haven't figured out when exactly they started to like Makoto, and when it began that they loved him so crazily enough to completely disregard our 15 years of friendship, as if they had lost all normal reasoning and brain function. It hasn't snowed in South City for a long time, and now, we are once again gazing at each other from afar in the snow, with no barriers between us. Yet we can never return to the time when there were no misunderstandings. I smiled and looked at her, saying, do you want the answer? Fine, I'll tell you. From the very beginning, my answer has been, Anna, Willow, I wouldn't choose any of you. As soon as the words fell, I turned and walked towards the playground. This time, her didn't speak again, and I didn't look back. Anna asked, Willow, was it really our fault? I gradually faded into the heavy snow and the crowd, wearing a white down jacket. Anna's voice was filled with melancholy, and deep down, she felt a heaviness that made her want to cry, yet she found it hard to do so, only able to sense the sourness in her throat. Willow didn't answer. just staring blankly in the direction George had left. She had never felt such a strong moment. It was as if they had truly lost George forever. 15 years and 3 years. They lost their genuine, untainted 15 years for a false 3 years. David asked. Who were those two people just now? I told you someone was calling you, and you said I must have misheard. A cold wind blew by, making David's nose turn red. He wrapped himself up tightly, leaving only his eyes exposed. Although they are both from South City, David has definitely heard of the Lusu families. But after all, he is still just a student, so it's normal that he wouldn't recognize them. I also didn't directly mention their names, just shook my head and brushed it off, saying, just former friends, and soon we won't even be friends anymore. What happened? David didn't like to pry into other people's privacy. This question slipped out without thinking, and only after asking did he realize it wasn't polite. Then he chuckled a couple of times and said, forget it. If it's inconvenient to talk about, just pretend I didn't ask. Chapter 22. I took several stunning photos of the snow scene with David, and only then were we both satisfied to return to the dormitory. As soon as we got back to the dormitory, David noticed that I had opened the computer, not knowing what I was tinkering with. And when he accidentally caught a glimpse of the content on my computer screen, he eagerly gathered around. He said, I swear, I really just accidentally saw it. I didn't mean to peek. David seriously raised his hand to swear, and then pointed at my computer screen where the news was open. He said, are you also interested in those recent events at South University? Let me tell you, that guy named Makoto or something has really gone too far. Just because he was jealous of another person's background, he did so many malicious things. And those two young ladies are quite pitiful too. They were just trying to help him out of kindness, but ended up doing something bad with good intentions. As I listened, I finally realized something was off. Looking back at that interview, I couldn't help but laugh out loud by the end. So this is what they call handling things. They pushed all the responsibility onto Makoto alone, while they beautifully vanished, even portraying themselves as the victims. But the person who harmed me was never just Makoto. It can even be said that the actions of Willow and Anna caused me more harm than Makoto did. Just like a person can accept the sudden malice of a stranger, the hardest thing to accept is the betrayal of a friend. To me, Makoto is no different from that stranger, but Willow and Anna have been by my side for 15 years. We have gone through one difficult time after another, and they should have been the most important people in my life. Yet in the end, they hurt me for another person. When it came time to settle everything, they actually pushed all the blame onto Makoto. Moreover, they used to love Makoto so deeply. How could they so easily give that up now? I can't understand. And I won't trouble myself over it. These questions will always be answered by someone me. During the winter break, I returned to South City. Actually, I never expected that after saying I would settle in City A and not come back, just half a year later, I would return. I didn't stay long. After getting off the plane, I went straight to the prison to see Makoto. I want to know what really happened back then. I never thought that Willow and Anna would really hate the person they once loved just because I left. But when I met Makoto, every word was a stab. Not a single sentence contained the answer I wanted. Until then, I rubbed my forehead, suppressing the irritation deep inside and said, what happened back then was not solely your doing. I don't believe you truly loved them so much that you would be willing to protect them. If he really loved Willow and Anna, then why has he been committed to making them marry me from the last life to this one? His curse words suddenly paused, and after a long while, he hesitantly asked, what, are you going to help me? But after thinking about it, he felt it was impossible, and he said, they are now completely focused on you. Would you really be willing to let them go? I actually don't quite understand Makoto's thoughts. After a moment of silence, I let out a sigh and said, you just need to tell me everything. Through the glass of the meeting room, Makoto seemed to be lost in thought, gazing at me deeply before suddenly bursting into laughter. He said, you and they are indeed the same kind of people, equally ruthless. As long as their own interests are touched, no matter who it is, they can strike hard. Upon hearing this, I shook my head, which was expected by him, but the reason I gave left him stunned. I said, I am not like them. I will indeed act ruthlessly against others for my own benefit, but that is always within the bounds of legality and reason. Chapter 23. I did not choose to directly sue Willow and Anna. After all, they as the only heirs of Lu and Su families, their words and actions represent both Lu-Su families. Initially, they were able to make the entire South City refuse to take my case, and now they can do so again. So, I used the methods that they had used back then. On the day the major universities opened, a piece of news spread like wildfire. People were discussing, have you heard? They say that the freshman who was caught last year actually had someone backing him. Otherwise, how could a freshman who isn't someone powerful have gotten away with it? Why did the victim never think of reporting it? It was because he was protected by his backer. Who is this backer? Do we even need to guess? It was clear to everyone how well the Liu family and the two Su ladies treated him. They claimed they were unaware, but besides the actual victim, who else could have known? Moreover, it said that the victim was childhood friends with them. When you put it that way, it makes even more sense. When it comes to lovers and friends, of course, one would choose a lover. As the topic's popularity grew, Liu Su, the true power holders of both families, also sensed that things were going awry and immediately began damage control. It was still the usual tactic of suppressing the heat, but this time the previously effective methods backfired, even directly provoking public protests. The official accounts of both families were flooded with protests and expressions of dissatisfaction. Netizens criticized. Can't you come up with something new? It's always the same trick. If you're not tired of it, I am. Exactly. With such great power, why can't you produce any evidence? Suppressing the heat again. What's the matter? Feeling guilty? Both families were busy as bees. Yet the heat of the situation showed no signs of cooling down. The PR team naturally sensed that someone was stirring the pot behind the scenes and began to smear the initial victim. They claimed that the initial victim was simply timid and afraid of trouble, that when faced with such incidents, they didn't dare to speak up, and that there was nothing about being too scared to report it. Some netizens believed her claims, thinking that it wasn't uncommon for someone to choose to silently endure such things. Now that the matter has come to light, instead of reflecting on his own cowardice at the time, he has the audacity to slander those who helped him, Willow and Anna, which is truly ungrateful. Of course, where there are believers, there will also be non-believers. A war of words erupted between the two sides, each believing they were the ones holding the truth. The center of discussion was suddenly shifted to me, and some even traced back to find my account, with some hurling insults, some supporting me, and others asking me what the truth of the matter was back then. Just when Liu Su's families thought they could remain hidden, a real name online report unexpectedly put Liu Su's families on the trending list. It's me, seeking evidence. At that moment, I was very glad I had the habit of recording. I held the video recording of the police report I made back then, and the audio I recorded when Anna forced me to withdraw the report was made public, instantly stirring up a wave of reactions. The speech was clear and well-structured, explaining all the truths of the matter, from our initial feelings, to Willow and Anna madly pursuing me for Makoto, and then to Makoto repeatedly hurting me. They went from being unaware to choosing to protect him, until finally, they actively stole my designs for him. In their hearts, love had long surpassed the law. If it weren't for the later revelation, they would have discovered that the person they loved did not love them back and was merely using them. This led to their embarrassment and anger, ultimately sending the person they once fought to protect into prison. The truth of the matter finally became clear. No matter how much the Liu family and Su tried to argue, it was ultimately futile. Chapter 24. The seriousness of the matter attracted the attention of the authorities, and after a thorough investigation, the situation began to develop in a direction that no one could control. The Liu family and Su finally fell from grace, and all the things they had done before were brought to light. Collusion between officials and businessmen, accepting bribes, all involved officials have been purged. I met Willow and Anna again. The two no longer had their former radiance. Just looking at their haggard appearance, one could tell how much they had been suffering during this time. They looked at me with complex expressions, their tone filled with disappointment. They asked, "Do you really hate us this much? Hate us to the point of disregarding our 15 years of friendship, forcing us into a corner?" I could see the unspoken words in their eyes, and for a moment, I found it somewhat amusing. I said, "Shouldn't I hate? Don't mention the 15 years of friendship anymore. The first to give up on our 15 years of friendship was you, wasn't it? When you treated me as a toy to make Makoto happy. Don't talk about 15 years of friendship. When you forced me to give up reporting to Makoto, and the entire police station in South City was forbidden from taking my case. Don't talk about 15 years of friendship. When you stole my design draft to give to Makoto, and sent the safety amulet that I begged for to Makoto. Don't talk about 15 years of friendship. Now that the fire has finally burned to them, they come back to mention 15 years of friendship. They said, "I'm sorry, George." Willow and Anna were filled with sorrow, finally realizing that there was no possibility of reconciliation between us. Those so-called methods of reconciliation were merely their one-sided wishes. Half a month later, the Liu and Su families announced their bankruptcies one after another, and the once proud daughters became targets of public scorn overnight. Although they were desperately protected by Mr. Liu and Mr. Su, they remained at South University. The vastly different treatment they received truly made them suffer. No one followed them around anymore, facing cold stares everywhere, and the huge debts left after the bankruptcy of the two groups. Without the support of Liu Su's two families, I finally succeeded in suing Anna for theft, because in the end, the design draft was returned by them. The final punishment was merely compensation for emotional distress. Adding to the malicious slander from earlier, The final compensation amount settled was just over 50,000. For the former Willow and Anna, this 50,000 was merely a small portion of their daily allowance, but for them now, it was like adding insult to injury. I kindly extended the repayment deadline for them. After all, in the face of other massive debts amounting to millions and billions, my 50,000 is truly insignificant. I didn't really want to push anyone to their death. I just wanted to reclaim the delayed justice for myself in my own way. On the day when everything settled down, I called David and the other 2 people in the dormitory to celebrate with a big meal. Celebrating my rebirth. I will finally no longer have any ties with Willow and Anna. Even if there are, it will only be a creditor relationship. Cheers. This tug of war actually consumed a lot of time. From the incident to the end, 3 years passed in the blink of an eye. This gathering, which was supposed to be a celebration, might very well be our last meal together. David drank a lot, and by the end, he was joyfully singing a tune, and then he said, "George, you are really amazing. After going through so much, you can still be so strong. If it were me, I would have definitely fallen apart by now." I smiled and said, "But feelings are not a necessity in life. Moreover, no matter what we go through, life is our own. We must always be true to ourselves." "George, what are your plans for the future?" another roommate asked me. After all, facing the pressure from 2 major corporations alone and still managing to hold on until the end is not something everyone can achieve. With such courage and perseverance, I think that no matter what I choose to do in the future, I will succeed, I said. First, I'll prepare for graduate school, and as for the distant future, of course, I want to be a designer. In the future, I will have a better life.